Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Zerbis. I'm the Technical Evangelist here at CTC, and today I get to take you through a Spreadsheet Link and Room Family Manager webinar. We're going to talk about how to do program creation and validation with those two tools. Now, this is a question that I've been asked many times by my architectural clients. So if you guys aren't architectural, you may still get value out of this workflow, but my focus today is going to be on architectural planning, in some cases medical planning or educational type planning, and working out clients' requests. Now, the question that I get asked a lot is how am I to manage my program requirements in Revit? That's often asked of me. How do I understand, what my design areas are, and how do I validate that and track that after the fact? Also, how do I capture, how many elements, X number of student desks or X number of patient beds and, head walls and sharps containers do I need in a space based on client meetings? That type of information is not always straightforward in Revit to be able to track. Many of us have an Excel-like workflow that we've gone through in the past. Now, to be clear, there are tools that explicitly do this in Revit. There's other add-in makers out there and companies that specialize in the planning management. Now, those aren't cheap solutions. They are quality, but they're not cheap. But some of my clients that are, they already own the Revit Express tools. They already own Spreadsheet Link and Room Family Manager, and they want to be able to do this. So they've asked me, is there a possibility with the tools that I already have that I can do this, that I can manage these programs? So in this session, I'm going to try to show you how you can do that. There's certain things that you have to make sure you do. You probably would want to make sure you document this process. You're going to want to make sure that users in your firm are educated how it's going to work. But can you do this? Can you use the tools at your fingertips, using tools like Spreadsheet Link and Room Family Manager, to build a building program? And I think the answer is yes. I think you can do this. And so I'm going to show you how that can be done today using tools you already own. First of all, we're going to establish Spreadsheet Link and Room Family Manager pre-configuration settings. We're going to have to create an Excel template that's going to be reusable. So we're going to use some advanced features of both Spreadsheet Link and of Room Family Manager to help build this. And then we're going to leverage those add-ins to actually generate rooms in our project with specific settings pre-applied to them, perhaps pre-associated to different departments and whatnot, different square footage requirements. And we're going to make sure that our Revit project template aligns with those settings in Spreadsheet Link. And then we're also going to talk about how you can, at the same time, plan out what type of content goes into those rooms or spaces. So this is not going to be a fully fleshed out discussion today. I'm not going to show you absolutely every minute detail because we've only got 30 minutes, and I want to try to show you how this can work. And if you've got questions about this in the future, I encourage you to get a hold of us. I do have a template that I can give out and some settings that I can give out about this. So if you want them, certainly ask, but it's not one of those types of settings that you can just directly take into your project, because you'll have to follow along a bit with this video, with this recording that we are making in the future, to kind of set these up for yourself, okay? I am making a couple of assumptions. I assume you're a quality Revit user already. You understand how to create project parameters, and you've done that type of stuff. You've built some schedules here and there. And I'm also assuming that you know how to use our tools. So, if you don't know those things, this is still valuable. You can see what can be done, but there are areas in here where you may get a little lost as far as exactly what I'm doing. I will try, however, to keep this as crystal clear as I can. There was a question that came through a moment ago. The question is this being recorded? The answer is absolutely. This is being recorded, and it will be available sometime, later today or early this week for you to be able to review and pass on to other people in your firm if you want to kind of re-review what it is I'm doing here. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in PowerPoint. That's not my style. I like to get directly into the demo. So let's jump into Revit and start taking a look at what we have. I currently have a very empty project file sitting here. There's very few views. There's very few settings. And I'm going to try to bring this all the way from nothing all the way to a tool set that you could use for preliminary room planning and content planning in the rooms. And of course, The more developed your templates are, the further you're going to be able to take this right away. All right. Let's see what we've got. First off, some parameters that I know that I'm going to want to track. I'm going to build these into my project, and I'm going to save this project. I'll also give this to you if you're interested in getting your hands on it, so you can have at least a basic starting point and see where I came from here. But I'm going to manage some settings here. Now, I would typically recommend these be shared parameters. Though for today's purposes, it doesn't really matter for what I'm doing. I'm going to just make them direct project parameters. So I need to have some information here about design square footage, design area. I'm not going to use square footage because that's 2 imperial units. I'm going to say design area. So I'm going to add a parameter for that. It's going to be associated to rooms. If you happen to be an MEP user, you could certainly associate this to spaces. Again, I would ideally like this to be a shared parameter, but doesn't really matter for my purposes right now. So I'm going to go ahead and use rooms, and I'm going to build up design area. And this is going to be an area parameter, so it holds the right data type. And I'm going to group this underneath something like identity data or possibly dimensions. It really depends on where you feel it's more appropriate. I think for my purposes here, I'm going to throw it into dimensions for now. It's the design floor area of these particular spaces. You could also have things like design department and other things so that you could track what was designed versus what actually happens in the project in case things move around. There's all different ways of doing this. You could have as many design parameters as needed. I'm going to put design area, and that's the only parameter that I'm going to add for my purposes right now. An example that I will show of a fully flushed out data set that I built for somebody else, I will kind of show you some of the stuff you can do with this that has a lot more parameters built in. For my purposes, design area is all I'm going to need. So I'm going to click OK. That's for my room. Now, to be able to begin this process in Spreadsheet Link, for rooms specifically, you must have at least one room placed to be able to initiate the process. You don't have to have one room placed to generate them later, but to create these, you'll have to have a room placed. So I'm going to go to my site plan, floor plan view, and I'm going to create a room out here. So architecture tab, and I'm going to create a room, and I'm just going to drop this guy out here. It's not enclosed. It probably should have been. And so that I can actually see this room, I'm going to enable temporary view template override, temporary view properties here, and I'm going to go to visibility graphics, thank you, and I'm going to go to rooms, and rooms, there we go, and I'm going to turn on the reference and its interior fill. And by doing that, I should theoretically be able to see that room out here. I still can't see it. Why not? My work set is loaded. Let's create some walls out here. So I actually have some walls surrounding that area where I placed that room. And I thought that I had placed one. Let's try again. Multiple rooms in the same enclosed region. Well, that's lovely. I should have tested this ahead of time. Let's see, visibility graphics and my rooms, just make sure rooms are on. I may have to change my cut plane. That's probably what I have to do. So that I'm cutting through the room, let's go at 4 feet. There we go. There's my room. I was just too high above the room. All right, so I've got a room out there. That's the critical part, have a room. Now I'm going to call up the Express Tools Spreadsheet link. And the purpose of this, and I have to save my file apparently as well. Let's save this as a template someplace. For now, I'm going to put this on my desktop, and this is going to be the Spreadsheet link Room Family Manager template. So that's what you'll get later on if you decide you want this file. Let's go to Spreadsheet link. Now again, I've created the room and placed it so that Spreadsheet link has the ability here, when I choose rooms, to actually call up the rooms tab. If you don't have a room placed, it'll yell at you and say there aren't any elements of this category, and so it will make it difficult for you to pull up the tab and get the parameters that you need. So just have that one room. Apparently I've got 2 rooms in there right now. Now these properties that I'm going to include here, these are values that are going to be meaningful for the purpose of planning. I typically will include number room number just to assign an arbitrary value to it so it doesn't get something that I'm not expecting. But I will most certainly include things like the department or the design department, either way. I'm also going to include design area. Okay, those are two values that I care about. This is going to be an area or square footage parameter because my project back here happens to be an imperial measurement. This will be square footage. The department is something that I may want to fill out for that particular room. I'm also going to give it a name. So I want to have some kind of a name or maybe a room type parameter. We'll get to that one more in a moment here, but certainly a name. And again, like I said, possibly a number and any other properties that you might care about. If there's parameter values that you want to set, like the area requirement per person, you could include that if it wasn't being set by something else. Or maybe you want to include, you know, the occupancy category from the IBC. There's all different things you could choose to include for this from a planning aspect so that when you generate these rooms in your project, they get generated with all those properties pre-applied. You know, a lot of times I see people just doing name and number. You know, with sheets, I see people doing sheet number and sheet name. But there's all kinds of other properties you can set when you're about to use this technique that I'm going to show you. Okay? So let's go back over here to Spreadsheet Link now. I've got these fields available. And if I wanted to make this repeatable to harvest rooms from a previous project in this exact same order, I should certainly save my settings. So I'll save my settings for right now, and I may take other settings in the future, but I'm going to save these for right now out as, let's see, we're going to go shared parameter, we're going to go RET settings, Spreadsheet Link, and we're going to do room types. That's probably my planning summary, but let's do room types for planning. I'll put planning as a prefix here. Planning room types. There we go. So in that folder, I'm going to call this out as planning room types, and I'll save that. So now anytime I want, I can recall these exact same settings. So if I wanted to go into another project, I could harvest the departments assigned to rooms. I could harvest the design areas if there were any assigned. I could harvest the names and the numbers so that if I wanted to steal from a medical project I've already done or maybe an educational project already completed, I can harvest the rooms from there. Similarly, other things, we can harvest those, like furniture that's already been placed or equipment that's already been placed in those types of projects. There's all different ways of leveraging the harvesting process. Here, though, I want to create a couple of new rooms since I don't have any yet. So I'm going to create a new room. It's going to be an unplaced room. I could choose a phase for it to be associated to if I really cared to. I don't care. It's just unplaced. So one new unplaced room, and I'm going to create, I guess I do have to associate a space or a room to it. So let's do new construction. That's pretty much in every project. So it's going to be a new room associated to new construction. That's what this element ID right here means. And at this point, I can save this out as the basis for my original template. So save, and I'm going to save this out into my room planning types as room type template, planning room types template as an XLSX file. Pay attention to this file type down here. We will later on save this out as things like XLSM as a macro-enabled workbook or other types of file formats depending on what our needs are. For right now, I'm going to use XLSX, just a basic Excel file, no macros in there, and just save this out. It wants to know if I want to open this spreadsheet in Excel, and my answer is absolutely yes, I do. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and I'm going to take the time right now to shut down Spreadsheet Link while that's opening up. I don't need to save my settings for right now. I am going to delete this room. I'm also going to go down to my schedules, to my room schedule that in my template already happens to pre-exist. You can see I have two not placed rooms. I'm going to delete them both so that my quote-unquote template already has an empty room, an empty project basically. And I'm going to sync this file, this template RVT file, so I can get rid of all those settings and just make sure that I've saved the fact that I do have that design area parameter built into here. It's not in my current schedule, but it's built into my project, and that's what matters for right now. Now let's transition over into Excel for a moment. In Excel, I need to unprotect this sheet, and I need to give myself a very clean list that I can use for some brand new rooms. So to do that, I'm going to go to, I believe it is my Review tab, and I'm going to unprotect this sheet. If I don't do that, and I try to do something like take rows 4 and 5 and delete them, you notice delete is grayed out. And that's because by default, when you save something out of Spreadsheet Link, it protects things. It protects you and other people from themselves, so they can't change element IDs or fields that are locked down in some format. So I need to unprotect this so I can give myself full access to it. And I'm going to use the super secret password here to unprotect this sheet, which is password all in lowercase. That's the default password for this. Once you've entered that, you now have full access to this sheet, and you can delete and edit whatever you want. Be careful with that, by the way, guys. If you unprotect a sheet and you edit a value that Revit doesn't want you to edit, you can cause yourself some problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this value here, I'm going to cut it and paste it up here. I'm going to clear out the data values from this, and I'm going to clear out all these data values as well. And then I'm going to take row 5. Well, it doesn't really matter because I can just take this and autofill it down a little ways. Now I can keep the color coding. I like colors. It makes it a little easier for me to see what's going on. But the important thing here is I've got a bunch of new rooms over here. I have no family type IDs specifically for rooms. Other elements may have this depending on what you're doing. But now I can go through and I can start assigning departments, and I can assign design areas and room names for these individual rooms, and probably room numbers as well, giving it some kind of a room number. Otherwise, Revit will just give it something when it brings it in. So first off here, for my department, let's do let's say we're doing a medical type project. So maybe I have you know, the operating room. So I'm going to have OR. I may have let's maybe make a couple of those. Maybe I have like ICU inside of here, and you probably would want to spell these things out. Maybe I've got I don't know, recovery. Maybe I've got admin, right? Like any room department that you're going to be needing. You could also, by the way, since this is now a true Excel file, you could have a tab that is created inside of here that is the department list, so that people could simply use a drop-down list here and choose departments from this list. So right now, you're building up the template that can be used for a planner to start entering the different types of departments they want to enter. At this point, I'm acting as a planner right now. You know, so I'm going to have admin over here as well. Okay, so now I can have things like the room name, and maybe I should have put these fields in a different order, like the name before the design area. The order is up to you. You fully control that. But I'm going to go in here and say, let's say the room name is going to be something like, this is the OR. So this is operating, and I'm going to put that all in capital letters because that's what I want to show up in Revit. And I've got like operating room type 1 and operating room type 2. I'm going to have in the ICU something like patient bed 1 and a patient bed, if I could spell, patient bed 2. Maybe in recovery, I've got private or patient bed private. And admin, I've got office type 1 and office type 2. Okay, super unique names, right? Like really clever, Sean. And then I can give these things numbers if I want to, like OR-1, OR-2, you know, whatever, just so that there's something unique that I can play with here. And if I had multiple patient 1 beds, you know, maybe I take this row 6 right here and I copy this, you know, and I insert this, I paste it, insert the copied cell, so I have, you know, more than 1 patient bed 1 type rooms. There's 1 patient bed or 2 patient bed rooms. Right, you can have as many of these as you need. If I need to have 12 of these, great. I've got 12 of these patient 1 bedrooms. Maybe I've got you know, patient bed -1A, patient bed -1B. Right, I'm going to try to give these things unique numbers so Revit doesn't yell at me as I create these rooms. As far as the design area goes, maybe I want to have, you know, 300 square foot for this guy, and I just put in the value, and Revit is going to read whatever my project units are automatically and tell me that that's going to be square footage right there. So should read 300 square feet. I don't have to put the SF. I can if I want to. If I wanted to go something like 350 square foot, it'll read that. If you happen to go into one of these and you say, I want it to be 200 square meters or M2, it'll go ahead and do that as well. In this case, it'll make the conversion for you. I'm just going to go ahead and put 200. We'll go, these are all single patient bed, 200, 200. We'll go 280 on this guy. Patient bed private, maybe we do, I don't know, 150, whatever, right? Office space, 100 square foot, maybe 150 square foot, doesn't really matter. whatever you want to put. So these are the individual criteria for design that I want to enter. I probably should autofill these guys down. That should be 1C, and we'll see what happens if I don't put anything. So at this point, this is enough if you're just doing room type pre-programming, and then I want to drop these into my project, and I want to see these values automatically come through from my planning process, these names, whatever the room numbers are, and the departments that I've specified. Maybe you've already got some color fills that are set up for these things. You could do a lot with this in your template, but let's go ahead and try and leverage this now inside of Revit. This is technically no longer my template, by the way. I should have done a save as, so let's do that real quick here. Save as, room types, we'll just not call it template, room types 1. And I'm going to close this, and just for the purpose of having a clean, true template, let's see, large amount of data, I don't care about that. I need to reopen that file in a moment here, and we'll kind of fix that up in a minute. But let's try to generate these rooms inside of Revit directly. And also, because I want to see my planning schedule in here, let's duplicate this guy and let's build a quick planning schedule, because you won't see these rooms until they're actually placed. So I'm going to go to my room schedule. I am going to rename this and call this room planning schedule. Get rid of the copy 1 on here. I'm going to have similar fields here that I would have had in that Excel file. So let's edit this guy, and let's keep the name and number. Let's keep the department. And in fact, let's move that up so I can actually group by that if I want to. I may care what level these are on, so maybe I keep that. I do want the actual area. In the future, I may want things like the occupancy and the comments, but for now, I'm going to remove those, and I'm going to instead include the design area and put that right by the area. So I can maybe do like a some kind of conditional formatting on this to see if I'm close to the value that I'm looking for. But this is the kind of what I want initially. So sorting and grouping, let's sort by and group by the department, and then I will go based on the room name perhaps, and then maybe by the room number if there's one assigned. And I want to itemize every instance inside my project. So let's click OK. Let's see what we come up with. There's my department, room numbers, room names, design area, and the actual square footage, which by default should be nothing because it'll be unplaced rooms. And let's run this process now. So I'm going to open up Spreadsheet link, and I'm going to import into my project the program that was set up by a designer who may not be Revit savvy. They may be in only Excel. So I'm going to open up what they've generated. Here's my planning room types 1 for whatever my project happens to be. It's going to pull in the data values here for the department, design area, name, and number. I'm going to apply the active worksheet directly to my project. This should generate for me 8 rooms, and it looks like it did. 8 elements created. Now, nothing's been placed in plan view yet, but it did generate all 8 rooms. And if I pull this down, you can see I've got my admin departments there. I've got my ICU, 3 rooms with room numbers where appropriate, where I've assigned it. The ones that were unnumbered, it didn't care about. It's like, hey, no big deal. I didn't have those. I've got my recovery room with my patient bed private in there. And if I look at my square footage values here, it looks like it took my 350 square foot where I put the SF, and it took all the other values also as square footage values because it's using Revit's core units. And none of these are placed yet. So I have just generated in my project a bunch of rooms. Basic planning, right? Done. Okay, so that's all good to go. Now, what I want to do is maybe I want to place a couple of those so you can actually see them be placed into the project itself. I'm going to close this out. Notice I didn't need to load any settings. I just opened up the spreadsheet. So I opened up the spreadsheet and applied it, and I got a bunch of these rooms. So now I can go through, and let's create some divisions here. Let's create some walls along this area here. And let's see, we'll kind of just make maybe 2 divisions here and maybe place an admin space and then maybe 2 of those patient rooms or something. So place a room. The way that I place a room that already exists is I go here to the drop down. I can choose which rooms it is I want. So maybe I want to grab, I had an admin space, but apparently I don't. Oh yeah, Office 1 and 2 right there. So I'm going to place Office 1 over here, which doesn't like my room tags apparently. That's why it didn't create the room tag value there. No big deal. I want to place patient bed 1 right here, and I want to place patient bed 2 over here. And if I wanted to see those, let me just go to Visibility Graphics and make sure that my room tags are actually visible. Room tags, there we go. Let's turn on room tags. There we go. There's my office that's unnumbered, my patient bed 1 and 2. So I've got them laid out. That should actually be PV-2C, but whatever, doesn't matter. So now what I want to do, what I need to do, is I wanted to plan out as well what equipment belongs in these types of rooms. Now, if I already have families loaded into my Revit project that I know are going to exist, I can have families and types, I can leverage those directly. So if I was to go over to something like BIM list, and let's just grab a bed real quick here and search for that. Now, these aren't patient beds, but ignore that for now. I'm just going to grab something like a basic standard bed, a basic, let's say, I don't know, a double right here. And I can drop this into my project. And as long as I have a family in here that's loaded, maybe not placed, but it's loaded, that's the critical part. So I have a double 54-inch by 75-inch standard bed. If I wanted to leverage that in my planning process, I just have to know what the name of the family is and the actual type name in a specific format. Now, I like to harvest these as well. That's a piece of furniture. So let's go ahead and create an instance. Let's go component here. And apparently furniture is not visible in my project, but if I go to, I thought it was furniture. Let's see here. Insert, no, architecture, component. Maybe I used the wrong command here. Component. Did I not load it? I thought I did. BIM list browser. Let's try this again. Drag and drop. Unless my location is not correct, then it may not let me place it. There we go. There's my component. It's been placed out in my project someplace. Of course, it's not visible because of visibility graphics settings. But if we turn on furniture, this is what I get for using a site plan view here, guys. I do apologize. Visibility graphics, and let's turn on furniture here in a site plan view. All right, there's my patient bed. So this has a name, a family name, and a type name. And if I want to harvest this from my project, I can again use Spreadsheet link. And I can say, hey, I want to harvest types, specifically furniture types in this case, or specialty equipment, or whatever the category is you're working with. And maybe I want to grab the family and type name. And that's really what I'm looking for here. So furniture types, where is it at? I thought I had family and type. You know what? I guess I don't. I have family type unique ID, but I wanted the family and type name. I don't have it here, so I'm going to go back, and instead of using the types, I'm going to use categories, furniture. I've got one instance of it out there, so I can go ahead and use the family and type right here. This will give me the exact format that I need for the next step. I may also want things like the width, length, and height of elements if they exist. So this one here looks like it has a type parameter for width. It has maybe a type parameter for length or height. Now it looks like it's got length and maybe height. No height. Depth, I'm not sure if it has anything else. Doesn't matter. That'll be close enough. But I can leverage these, and if I hide the unit symbol, I can explicitly get the feet of this. Or if I had changed my Revit units to inches, I could have gotten the inches value of this, which is actually the most important value for width and length. But with this, I can actually save this out and use this as a part of my next workflow, knowing what my furniture is in my project that I already have. So that's where I'm going to use the next tool, which is the Room Family Manager tool. So let me save this, save. And I'm going to, again, using planning room types here, I'm going to call this my furniture list. I cannot type today. We'll save this out. Want to know if I want to open this up right now in Excel. In this case, I do not want to open it up. I just wanted to save the list and some of my basic dimensions right there. And now what I'm going to do, and if I wanted to reharvest other families from other projects, I probably would have wanted to save those settings to keep them in a similar format. In my case, I'm just, trying to get a basic list for right now for today's discussion here. But let's go now into Room Family Manager and see how this tool wants to work. So with this tool, this requires a few more parameters to be added. Now, I don't have any room RFM room type parameters or validation status parameters, but if I'm going to use this for full program validation into the future, I would probably want to make sure that my template had those, and then I could also potentially have set those during the planning stage, knowing what the room type was, and it could have been pre-associated before I even got into this tool here. But let's go ahead and add the parameter for RFM room type. You can use your own shared parameters if you want to. We build our own if you don't have them yet. It does need to be a shared parameter. So there's my RFM room type, and then I've also got here my RFM validation status parameter that you can just generate live here, or again, if you already had them, you could drop them down and use it. Now, it does require this be saved after your first run of this tool. So it's going to save it. It's going to lock these two parameters in. That way, Room Family Manager knows those parameters will be there, and that's important. So let's go through the exercise now of building some room types. Here, I have things like a preloaded, pre-existing template that I already had opened up here. Let's make a brand new one and just kind of see what we get. What we get is a single sheet that has room type, family and type, quantity, length, width, and height. So if I knew what a room type was here and I said, hey, I want to have patient bed 1 as a room type, which also happens to match, say, my room name down here, I could go over here and say, I want to use a specific family and type. That would be that bed standard space, colon, space, whatever the name was, right? Like, as a planner, I'm never going to remember this. So I need to help them by building up a template that they can use to automatically drive family and type, that they can use potentially to automatically drive typical room types, that they can use to automatically specify what quantities of beds they want in these different spaces. So I'm going to basically save this file out. This format right here is the most important. I'm going to save this out as the RFM base template, and then I'm going to do a bunch of development in Excel, and then we'll come back here and see how we can leverage that Excel development directly inside of Room Family Manager right there. So this is going to be my RFM base template. Ultimately, we're going to combine this all together into one template, guys, so that this isn't going to be, you know, a bajillion different files. It's going to be one file that we're going to use. But I'm going to go ahead, now that I've saved that, let's open that up in Excel directly. So let's go, I've got Excel here. Let's do open. Where'd it go? It's on my other screen. Let's pull this across so you guys can see what I'm doing. Let's see. Browse. There we go. The new format for Excel sometimes still messes with me here. So C drive, this is where I've got it saved. My RET demo settings. This technically is in my shared spreadsheet link folder, and I've got my planning room types folder here, and there is my Room Family Manager base template XLS. Not really what I want. I want an XLSX, but we'll start with this, and then we're going to open up a couple of other files and transfer some stuff across so we have one big template here. That's what I want ultimately, is one big old template. So let's open this up. I'm going to have my sheet 1, which I'm going to rename to RFM planning. I'm going to open another file here. Let's do open, and let's grab the, why does it keep defaulting back there? Let's go spreadsheet link, room, where's it at? Room types, there we go. And then we're going to grab furniture list. So we're going to grab this guy. And so I've got my list of different furniture, and I want to basically copy this tab over into this file, or vice versa. Either way, I want to copy them basically to each other. So I'm going to move this guy, move or copy. I'm going to move this over into my furniture list and basically move it to the end, or move it before furniture. It doesn't really matter. So I've now got the RFM planning tab over here, and I can basically get rid of that other file. I don't need it. Now that I've got this, I can do some kind of a lookup over here if I wanted. I could take this furniture list and I could do a lookup off of here, get the name and get the physical sizes of this if I wanted. So that's basically doing something like a list, you know, from data, doing like a data validation and building a list and telling it you can use things outside of that list. There's all kinds of things you can do with this. For my purposes right now, I'm simply going to copy this value and paste it over here. If I'm using specifically a family and type, I don't need to specify lengths, widths, or heights. I just need to tell it how many of something I need, like 1. Well, for patient bed 2, for that room type, I'm going to use exactly the same bed, paste that, and I may want to have a quantity of 2 for this. And then, you know, maybe inside of here, let's copy this guy down a little bit. I want to have a basic wastebasket. Oops, I didn't do copy, I did paste accidentally. Copy and paste, there we go. I want to have a wastebasket. That's going to be a family, but I don't know if I have this loaded in my project yet. So as a planner, I can just type in whatever name I want. I can say I want to have, let's say, one wastebasket in there, and I want to give it some specific dimensions. Like I want it to be a 24-inch by 18-inch by, I don't know, 18-inch, right? Like I can, or 12-inch, let's call it 12 inches. So I can call out a wastebasket as whatever physical dimensions I want. With Room Family Manager, if it doesn't find the family specified here, it'll generate a default for the planner when they use this in their Revit project. So it'll build me a wastebasket, it'll make me one of them, and it's going to make it at this dimensions with just a generic cube. So if you're not specifying specific families and types, you can make your own, which is a kind of a really cool feature of Room Family Manager. Now, I would want to save this, and probably I would want to take this tab over here from wherever this was. This is the, that's my wrong template. That's my other file that I'm going to pull on screen for you in a moment here that does some extra stuff. I might want to take that original rooms planning tab, so I could have my rooms in here. I could have my RFM planning tab and take each of those room types or room names and specify what content I needed, how many of those families I needed, and then I can eventually bring all this into my project all at once. That's the whole planning process kind of in a nutshell. Let me save this file here. I'm going to save my furniture list actually as a new name. File, save as. I'm going to overwrite. No, I won't overwrite it. I'm going to do planning room types 2. Planning room types 2. Ultimately, I should combine those two together and actually combine those tabs into my template so I can make this, again, repeatable. That's the goal. But I now would want to open that here inside of Room Family Manager. Let's load room types 2, and I can see I've got now whatever the person had planned out in Excel, different room types. So a patient bed room type, and I can have them in any order I want. I would typically cluster them together, but you can get lazy if you want to and put them separately. It doesn't really matter. But as long as it has those definitions there and the names are consistent enough, I can have them in my list. Now, I can go to different rooms in my project and I can assign those room types. So this is an actual room that's placed in my model. This is another room that's placed in my model. There's another office that's placed in my model already. I can then say, you are a patient bed 1 and you are a patient bed 2, or whatever coding your planners want to use for the different types of rooms. By doing this, when I say patient bed 1, for example, it's going to say, hey, whenever I see that room, this patient bed 1 room down here, it's going to understand that it's supposed to have certain families based on the room type defined over here in that room, in that space. So I can now say place families for this patient bed 1 and patient bed 2. So it'll actually place the content for both of those in my project directly. When I say place families, it'll go through and do that. Now, because it has to define that one family, it's going to actually upgrade it because it was done in originally 2012. But it'll place them out there. And let's close out of this process and let's take a look at what it did in the floor plan. Let's just okay this. It needs to have a leader placed on these actual rooms or on these room tags so that it understands where they're supposed to be pointing. Because it doesn't like when room tags exist outside their boundaries. I want them outside so I can see what's going on here. So here's my patient bed 1. I've got the bed, a single bed, and then I've got a wastebasket out here. You can actually see it's built a Revit family, Room Family Manager placeholder family. It belongs to patient bed 1 as a wastebasket, and if I look at its properties, it's built it 1 foot by 2 foot by 1 foot 6. So it's actually put those dimensions out there for me. So it'll actually place that content. Over here in patient bed 2, there's supposed to be 2 patient beds. So if I move this patient bed over, you can actually see I've got 2 patient beds. It dropped them right in the middle of the room for me. So any content that was spec'd could be dropped out there. Now, why is that meaningful? Well, let's just say somebody deletes a patient bed or moves it to a different room and doesn't redefine this room type right here. You can come back into Room Family Manager in the future. You can go to Place Families and Validate, and you can validate all your rooms, and it'll tell you patient bed 2 has too few of X number of spec'd families. So the planner in their Excel process can have said, I expect to have X number of patient head walls, patient beds, and blah in these different rooms, and then later on you can come back and plan it either by hand or automatically using Room Family Manager, and it'll come back and let you know if you're missing stuff that was a part of the validation. Now, if I am missing stuff, I can just say to place the families, and it'll drop them back in those rooms, so I don't have to go hunt and peck for the families. It'll find it and place it, and then I can reorganize the room as I see fit, but it helps me with that planning process. So now, using the 2 different tools, using Spreadsheet Link I can auto-generate rooms from a list. Using the Room Family Manager, I can auto-generate families inside the rooms based on lists of families that belong to different room types. So this is a little bit of a long setup process, right? It does take a little bit of setup time, and it will take a little bit more refinement of the actual Excel files to get this to work real cleanly, but there's a lot you can do with it. Let me give an example of this real quick. This is a somewhat more fleshed out template, a room data sheet sort of sample template here, where I've got Room Family Manager data sheet here. You can see that same exact tab, and I've got different room types over here where I can drop that list down and choose different room types that exist in my project. Maybe I'm sourcing that from a rooms list over here, so it's actually looking at rooms that I have and or a list of just room types that I have, sourcing them, and I can have as many parameters here as I feel is appropriate, you know, different types of occupancy category by design, different types of architectural doors that are supposed to be spec'd, and different finishes that are supposed to be spec'd. All of this information can be pre-planned out by a planner in Excel. They can pre-specify over here for those individual rooms or room types what type of content is supposed to be here. And I've got a little content list that I've built up of typical content for a project, and I can create a little validation list for this as well. They can choose the quantities for that, so they can go through and fully spec this out all in the Excel environment, never having to leave Excel, never needing to know anything about Revit. And then ultimately when they save this for a project, I can simply open up my project template. I can dump those rooms in. Either I or they can lay the rooms out in my project, however they feel is appropriate. And then I can use Room Family Manager to take and dump all this content into those rooms and then further lay them out. Right? That can be one fluid, streamlined process as long as you have the templates all configured. Now, one final thing, you can actually build from this process actual room data sheets. So over here in my Rooms tab, if I've got some information like, you know, this happens to be more of an educational type project, but if I had, say, Science K-12 room type 1, and I had different criteria here of, you know, lighting type 1, and occupancy density type is going to be educational with, you know, non-fixed seating, whatever, right? Like you can go through and put in whatever properties you want. If I wanted a room data sheet for this room, let me delete this guy real quick here since it's already in my project. I have a little macro that I wrote. This macro basically does a room data sheet creation for me and an update. So what I'm going to do here with this is I'm simply going to do Control-Shift-R, and it's going to build for me a room data sheet. It's going to put it all together, and it's going to look up all that information. There's my lighting type 1, my educational non-fixed seating, right? It's got whatever my program functional room number is. Anything that I've pre-planned out here is going to dump automatically over to my room data sheets over here. Whatever formatting it is you feel appropriate, it'll fill it out. So I could then quickly go here and say, build me my next sheet, Control-Shift-R, there's my Science K2. I could say, build up my reception, you know, Control-Shift-R, because that's my keyboard shortcut. There's my reception room, and it has all of its data pre-filled out. That's a little bit further down the line, but this is still just Excel combined with a little bit of workflow using Spreadsheet links. So I can source my rooms here using Spreadsheet link, and I can source my content in those rooms using the Room Family Manager data sheet tab with Room Family Manager. Full workflow, fully fleshed out, once you guys kind of define this inside of your templates. All right, let's jump back over here to PowerPoint for just a moment, and let's take a look at what could be done. It is possible to leverage the Revit Express tools to establish simple, repeatable programming for your projects. That is possible. Room types, equipment in rooms, all that can be planned out with clients well before any kind of modeling takes place. That is fully possible as well. Here's the key. It does take process development, template development, and thinking on your guys' side, as well as documentation to make this useful to end users so they know how the workflow works. But it can be done, and it can be done once it's all set up in a very efficient way.